Well, hi, everybody. Another Conversations with, and I'm delighted to have with me Bonnie Wallace. And Bonnie is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous lady and has taken on a new enterprise. And how is that going? You've got your new studio down in Connecticut, just over the line.
Yep, just over the border. It's about 15, 20 minutes from Charlton. It's going great. We have a lot of happy students and classes are going really well. The studio's nice and warm now. It took a little while to get in the old mill to get the heat fixed.
Fixed, yeah.
But it's now working and it's nice and toasty warm, and we've got some beautiful decorations out front. One of the students decorated it for fall, so it looks so nice.
Oh, that's great. Well, none of that, but we went down, Drew and I went down and we did a program with your friend John.
Yeah, and his classes are going great. The Thai Yoga Chi class is going great. So definitely one of our more popular. I would say our top 3 classes are the Gentle Yoga class with Donnie.
Yeah.
And the Thai Yoga Chi with John.
Yeah.
And then the Renew Body Sequence class that is my class on Tuesday night. And then the Pound class, which is Wednesdays, that's with the drumsticks. She has these bright green drumsticks, and you like play the drums. Well, it's not like a real drum; it's like an imaginary drum. But anyway, people love that.
Really?
So, and we have bar classes, which are great as well. And we also have group fitness, so like strength conditioning. Shirley has a great following that's been following her for a long time, so it's definitely going well.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. That's great. So that keeps you out of trouble and busy.
Yes, definitely very busy. That is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Running.
Running around after children, with children,
Do you
taking
still do
children.
the singing?
I am still working for hospice, so that's going well.
Good.
Yep, definitely. One of my highlights of my week is the time that I spend with hospice and my music therapy job. I recently I noticed a couple people online referring to themselves as a music therapist that aren't music therapists. This gets under my skin.
Really?
Because in order to be a music therapist, I think I've talked about this before, but it's a degree program, very specific. You have to learn psychology and anatomy, and you have to
It's not just sitting
statistics.
down. It's not just sit down playing and singing.
Right, all the musical skills, music theory, music history, solfege, and then you have to take a board exam, knowing all the different populations and all the diagnoses of people that you would work with, all the settings, whether it be in a hospital, whether it be in a nursing home, whether it be in a school setting, whether it be in a rehab facility. I mean, all the different settings, you have to know what is appropriate for that setting, ethical boundaries. I mean, there's just so much that goes into the degree program, and it's 1,200 hours of clinical work before you can even take the board exam. 1,200 hours of clinical work, supervised.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Supervised by someone in the field for 1,200 before you can even take the board exam, and you have to pass that, by the way. Like, you're graded on it.
Well, it's funny you say that. I had some serious operations, and I had name is Darren Klaus, and he is at Mass General, and he's a vascular surgeon. He is the chief of vascular surgery at Harvard Medical School, teaches it. And one of the days we were meeting before the operation, we were chatting, and he gave me his card, and I looked at it, and he's got a bunch of initials after his name. And it starts with MD, and then there's FAS, and that means he's in the faculty of the American Society of that. And then he has one that said RPVI. And I said to him, Dr. Klaus, what is RVPI? Oh, he said, I passed the test. No big deal. And he kind of shrugged it off. Well, being curious as I am, I got home and I looked it up. And this is what it says. Registered physician for vascular intervention. And I found out only 5 other guys passed the test
Wow.
in the United States of America. So the next time I saw him, I said to him, "Hey, wait a minute, Darren, you didn't tell me that you were one of 6 guys who, by the way, passed the test." And he started to laugh. And he said, "Yeah, I'm one of 6." And so then I began to, I said, "Whoa," you know, and you just stunned me with, and I'm so glad you did, with 1,200, and then you said, like you said, "Oh, and then you got to pass the test."
And it's a big test.
That the first thing I thought of was the Dr. Klaus story, because he kind of just, wow,
Right.
and then I find out he's one of 6 physicians in the United States who have that title,
Right.
and he's one of the foremost vascular surgeons in the country,
Right.
and so, to your point, I mean, this is really something. I mean,
Right. And there's only about 2,000 board certified music therapists. So we have a little letters at the end,
Yeah.
which is MT-BC, which means music therapist board certified.
Yeah.
And those 4 letters, not only do you have
Distinguish
to
you.
take the test the first time, but you have to continue submitting 100 hours of continuing education every 5 years, which includes 5 hours of ethics.
Yeah.
And so we hold ourselves to a really high ethical professional standard in the medical community, because we are interacting with doctors and nurses, and
Yeah.
we are treating patients
Yeah.
for diagnoses, and we need to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So when someone goes and takes 10 weekend-long trainings in sound healing and then says, "I'm a music therapist," I'm like,
No,
what
you're
you're
not.
doing is very valuable, and I love that you're doing that, because no doubt it's therapeutic, no doubt it's helping people. But there is no way that you have the ethical standard and the education to be part of a clinical medical team that a board certified music therapist has.
Yeah.
It's so,
Well,
and it's
you
just a matter of
mentioned that-
education.
You mentioned that, because they dropped me in there at 8:30, and I woke up at 4:45, and it was 4.5-hour operation, and I get back to my room, and in he comes, and he's got four people with him, three younger doctors who are all from Harvard Medical School, and a nurse practitioner who's Erin, and they all came in, and they're all chatting and so forth, and when I saw him alone again, he said, "Oh, those are the kids," he said, "that work on my team." He says, "We have a team," and then I find out that there was 3 different surgeons who did the operation. One doctor did the front and back. He opened me up, and then he's the one that puts all the pins back in to close you up. Then there was a surgeon who cut down to the artery, and then Dr. Klaus comes in and actually repairs my artery. And it's 4.5 hours. And I said, "Well, how come you had so many?" He says, "Dick, the operation," he said, "remember, one slip and you go home in a box." He says,
Yeah.
So he says, "Remember that."
Yeah.
So he says, he says, my part of that operation was 1 hour and 15 minutes. And by the time I finished, I can't make a mistake,
Right.
or you're not going to live. And he says, so, one person couldn't do it. He said, you just couldn't do it. And he said, that's why we have a team, And to your point, and you're working in that same capacity with tremendous education, A, with a ton of experience, B, and to your point, it's great for these people to say, I go out and sing for people. That's a lot different than saying, I'm a music therapist.
Right. It's fine to say, you're creating a therapeutic environment using
Yeah.
music. You can say that.
Yeah.
Right. But I can't call myself a doctor, nor would I.
No.
Right? That's not my training. Am I providing helpful healing to patients in need? Absolutely. Does a doctor do that too? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I can call myself a doctor.
No. Well, I mean,
Do you know what I mean? So
no, and it's so
it's the
true.
same thing with music therapy.
And then, the interesting thing is, I go back in December. Now, the first one was done. This one was done in March. This one was done in May. Then I go back in, and I've been back twice. Now, I got a third one in December, and they're going to do the same thing. And it's all with info, sounding and pictures and everything else. just to make sure it's all working. You know, that everything is perfect. And when they call me, they say, we want you to come back on the 18th of December, and we want you to do the test A, B, and C again. I said, well, I've done those 3 times. I know, but we want to just make sure. And you say, wow, you know, wow. That was all part of the original surgery. And so he can say, you're fine, because now it's basically all healed. And I mean, and you think about it, and you say, wow, well, that goes back to the training that you had. You know, that you know exactly what you're doing, how you're doing it. You're working with a team approach. There's physicians and nurses and so forth with this patient, and you're helping them. But I have to be honest. I'm impressed. You know, 1,200 hours, and as you said, and then you got to pass the test.
Right. Which is, you know, and if you don't continue with your credits every 5 years, you have to retake the test every 5 years.
Wow.
So if you want to keep your credential, but as far as, you know, what you mentioned about knowing what you're doing, I think for someone who doesn't know what goes into what I do, they think I'm just like a volunteer that just shows up and I'm nicely playing music for this person. They have no idea the clinical judgment that I'm using in what I'm doing. For instance, there was a patient who came on who I was told is blind and deaf. So in my mind, I'm like, well, they're blind and deaf. I'm not going to bring in my guitar because A, they can't see it, and B, they're not going to be able to hear it very well because it's not very loud.
No.
Right? So, you know, I was told they have some residual hearing, some residual sight, you know, but not much. So I brought this little speaker. It's about this big, but it's very powerful. It has a great sound to it. And I put that speaker right on the bed, on their pillow, next to their ear, the good ear. And then on that speaker, I put soft, soothing music. And then I sat and I said in a very loud voice, "Can you hear the music?" "Oh, yes, it's beautiful. I love it." So that someone who just comes in with no clinical training as to how to modify what they're doing.
Would have sat there and played.
Would just come in with the guitar and play the same thing they do for everybody else and said, "Oh, that patient couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
I can't help that person." So again, that's a way that a therapist is going to use a different intervention based on each person. Some people who I see are very high functioning. They're not bedridden yet. You know, they are just coming onto hospice. Those people, I bring them in the group room, in the day room or dining room with everyone. Because if I'm going to sing to them and they're sitting upright and awake, then why wouldn't I bring them in the room where other people can listen and enjoy it? This creates the third person effect, the third person in the room. Because what happens is the person witnessing that, it brings them joy. They see this patient who's usually a pain in the butt. I have to tell you this. A lot of times the patients that come on hospice are the ones that everyone's aggravated with because they're exhibiting these ends of life signs. They're needing more attention from the staff. Yeah. And it gets irritating to the other patients who think they're calling out, they're reaching out, and the other patients will get annoyed with them. You have to put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. They're with them around the clock, all 3 meals, in the same room, all day long.
Well, I have to tell you a story.
Yeah.
I interviewed some people from Christopher Heights. This is on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
6, 7 years ago. And during the broadcast, one of them said to me, I'm sitting here and you remind me of George Burns. And I laughed and I said, well, I'm going to show you a treat before you leave. We finished the broadcast. I went out to my car, and in my little box by my driver's seat, I have a cigar and a pair of round horn-rimmed glasses. And I put them on, and I held a cigar. And she said, "Oh, my God." geez, you look just like him. Not only do you sound like him, and I sing a little tune. I have him on tape,
Yeah.
song called I Wish I Was 18 Again.
Okay.
And he sings it, and then I read the first part, and then they go into the chorus, and I sing it with them at the end. But anyway, they said to me, "You got to come over to the to the Christopher Heights in Webster." Oh, okay. So, and they finally called me, and I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I went over, and they brought all these people down to the room, and I put on my tuxedo, you know, and I went in. I had my class, and we have a very special guest. Well, there was a delightful woman who was in her 90s, and of course they all love it because they grew up with George Burns.
Right, right.
Okay, young people don't know who he is. They grew up with him.
I do, and I think you look just like him. That's so funny.
So anyway, we do the thing, and I tell a bunch of jokes. It's all. I have a whole list of George Burns jokes, and I always end it with, you know, I have a bunch of little endings thing, and I say, I want you to treat today like it's the last day, because one of these days you're going to be right. And they all laugh. Well, I finish, and I'm getting ready to leave, and there's one woman who's in her 90s. She is refusing to go back to her room. She wants me to come over, and she wants to get a picture with George Burns. She was absolutely, and sadly, in a way, but funny, that I was, in fact, George Burns.
Right.
And she wanted a picture, so when her family came to visit her, she could show them a picture of George Burns and her, that George Burns, she met him, and she wants an autograph. And, well, they had to get a camera and take pictures, and it was delightful. It was delightful, and she wouldn't let me leave. I mean, you know, I said, I got to get back to work. You know, well, come and tell me another story, George. You know, and it was incredible. So to your point, you know, there's certain people that will hang on,
Right.
and I'm sure there are people that you work with that absolutely can't wait till you come again.
Yeah.
And it's you're the treat of their day.
It
know?
is nice when they say that too. It's nice when they will
Yeah.
say something to that effect.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they were trying to get this poor lady on the yellow. She was not going to leave, and you know, and they were apologizing to me, and I said, you know what, 10 minutes, if I could make that poor lady's day, I said, look at what did it cost me?
right.
I said, I made her day.
Exactly.
You know, maybe I made the rest of her life, you know, but you know, it was just an incredible experience, which I had a lot of fun at.
I hope no one told her it wasn't really George Burns. 'Cause,
That's not my problem.
you know, I would hate for her grandson to be like,
That's not
Grandma,
real- that's not really here."
really George Burns. Ruin
Yeah.
her whole.
Yeah. No, but I mean, she was just, George Burns came to see her, you know.
Right.
And I was thinking about when you tell me the story, because there's got to be people who can't wait for you to come back, you know. And I think that's.
That's why I keep doing it, you know,
Yeah.
because I do love that. It's something that they enjoy, they look forward to. It is hard to leave, you know. I go in the morning,
Yeah.
and then I go teach a yoga class, and then I go to another place in the afternoon, and so I have to run from each
Yeah, yeah.
place, and I do feel bad leaving sometimes. I'm like,
Well, you know, we had a chance, I think, in the last week and a half. I sat back and I saw something that was so exciting and fun, was the Red Sox players. Now, I'm the first to tell you, they're all multimillionaires. Got it. Not all of them. Some of them only made $500,000 this year, some of the young guys. The money, just because they won the World Series, some of them are going to get more money for that than they got paid. The World Series money is going to be almost $500,000 for the 3 playoffs that they were in. But once that was over and they won that game, you saw a whole different side of them. You saw them like a bunch of kids. You know, and these are all guys that are 27, 28, 30, 35, jumping around, having fun. They got on that duck boats. They went to the Celtics game. They went to the Patriots game. And they don't want to let go. You know, that's the trophy that they. Now, when you look back at it, they played 100 and they ended up 119 and 50. They played about 175 baseball games in 6 months, flying back and forth around the country. I mean, like most of them said, thank God for our families. People don't realize they're only home half a year.
Right.
They play half the schedules in Boston, and the rest of it's on the road. They're
Right.
gone, you know, every month. They're gone for 2 or 3 weeks, and so. But you saw a different side of them. I mean, you know, guys like J.D. Martinez and David Price, who had great performances in the games, were like a little bunch of kids. You know, they were jumping up and down, and they were excited, and it goes back and it makes me think of you. Of all the things you do, you are just enthusiastic about them, you know? and at the same time running yourself ragged, which I understand, but at the same time look forward to doing them.
Right, right.
And get great joy from them.
True.
You know, and even in your classes at your studio, you've seen these people come in and watch how much they enjoy it. And they obviously enjoy it, they wouldn't keep coming.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. I do think what my hospice work gives me a better perspective as a yoga teacher too. You know? Because I think it just gives me a better perspective in general, because it really helps you value life. You know, when you're sitting with people when their life's about to end, and you know that someday that'll be you.
Yeah.
And you know that it'll be your family, that, you know, life's short, and so make the most of it, because you don't know how much time you have.
No.
And you don't know when somebody's gonna, you know, like for instance, I go to certain facilities and I'll oftentimes bring my patients into the main room, so I meet everybody else, even though they're not my patients.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have the best conversations with them. They'll start talking to me and telling me fun things. And this one patient who I've known for 2 years, all of a sudden now she's my hospice patient. I was so sad to find
Yeah.
that out, because, you know,
Yeah.
I'm glad I get to see her more, but
Yeah.
it does make you value that life is short and you only have so much time.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I have a great friend who happens to be a priest in a local parish. And he talked about that the other day at one of his homilies. He was chatting about it, and he looked up and said, remember, no one lives forever, you know. And so, you know, I love all of you, but we're all going to the same place at some point in time. You know, it's just when. It's not if, it's when. You know, and so, and you sit back and say, "Woo, he's right," you know, and then you must have situations where you have somebody that you work with, and you go back next week and they're not there anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Usually I'll get a text.
Yeah.
So this is the life of when you work in the hospice. Your phone dings and you don't
Yeah.
know if it's because somebody died.
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, and I'm just used to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for somebody else, that's like, oh my God, that's horrible. But that's, you know, why I work with them, is because they are going to pass away
Yeah.
within 6 months. So, yeah, it is sad when you find out that someone's passed away. And the nice thing is, the hospices that I have worked for, I've been able to play at the memorial services a lot of times
Yeah.
for people. I get to bring my guitar, and I
Yeah.
get to help bring closure to the families, or, you know, the
Yeah.
facility.
And that's good for you too.
Yeah,
You know,
it is. It's nice. I really like doing it.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of the things
Well,
I
you know,
like.
the thing that we talked about so many times, I saw an interesting article. It's got to be about a week ago, and it made me think of you. You know, and it was a medical thing about yoga, how yoga now, doctors are urging some patients in certain areas to take yoga, because it's very, very, very good for them, especially for stress, people who have a lot of stress, that it's you know, they can give you a pill, but they'd rather have you go do yoga.
That's great. That's
You know?
great. I hope a lot of doctors are doing
Well,
that.
and was this an incredible article? How it was in one of the medical journals, how more and more doctors, especially people who have stress and have stress-related issues, they're recommending to take yoga because it's very peaceful, it's very calming, it brings them down, you know, and they're strongly recommending it versus taking pills.
I agree, although I don't know if I can tell you, like, don't take a pill, come to yoga, because
No, you
I'm
can't.
not a doctor,
No.
but
No.
I do think that it does help with stress reduction, and I do think that people who have a regular yoga practice, you know, and meditation practice are probably, you know, have another set of tools for coping with stress. It's
Yeah.
not that we don't have stress, because I have just as much stress as everyone else. It's just that yoga helps me to function with that amount of stress.
Well, you know, I have to be real honest, and I've been around a long time, and I've lived long enough, because someone asked me the other day, what was it like when you were a kid in high school? Well, it was a different world, number one. We had no drugs. You didn't dare drink. Your father ever touch your father's beer, you'd break your arm, okay? That was that. You did what you were told. And if you acted up, by the time you got home, your father already knew, because everybody in the neighborhood, everybody knew each other. And we were thick as thieves as kids. We all got along. We protect each other. We defend each other. We even had a thing in high school, and I told somebody that, and they couldn't believe it. I said, we had a thing in high school, and I went to school, that if you and I were going out, and we broke up, before any other guy at Malden High School would ask you out, he would come to me first and ask me if it was okay. That's how it was, you know? I mean, you talk about protection, you know, and the girls didn't like it, you know?
I was just gonna say, I don't know about this
But no, it was just-
in this day and age.
Oh, no. This was the 50s and 60s.
I get it though.
You know, this was the 50s and 60s.
In that era, that was a show of respect and camaraderie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and because a lot of times you'd fight and argue, break up and go back together 4 weeks later.
Right.
And somebody in the meantime would only complicate that process.
Right.
You know, but it didn't matter. It was a different world. Mm-hmm. And everybody, and even the girls, we all got along together. You know, everybody had fun. And I told this to somebody, and they looked at me almost in disbelief. And I said, and I went to a school, and it was a 3-year school, 10, 11, and 12, and we had 374 in our graduating class, which was a big class back then. And in those 3 years I was there, we did not have one pregnancy,
Wow.
period. Because in those days, that's not what you did, because you had a different respect.
Wow.
Okay, a different respect. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me and said, really? I said, really? I said, a kiss was phenomenal. You got to understand it, mm-hmm. you know. And I said, it was a different world, mm-hmm. you know. And everybody respected each other. We respected the girls, and we respected them for who they were.
Right.
You know, and it was just different, you know. And I said, today it's just not the same anymore. You know, it's a different world. And I said, and you talk about stress. We're in a very stressful world. We're in a stressful country. You know, we just went through an election. It was, you know, people fighting and arguing and shooting people and killing each other. You watch the morning news, and you know, I have to turn it off some mornings. Like Jen will say to me, what was on the news this morning? Oh, same thing as yesterday. Different names, different street. What do you mean? Well, 2 guys got shot in Boston, but it was on a different street today, and their names are not, and they're 2 different guys. And every morning there's 2 people shot in Boston. Every morning someone gets hit by a hit-and-run driver. Every morning there's a guy hits a tree. Every morning there's a drunk driver. Names are different. News doesn't change. And we never had that back then. You know, it was a different world, you know, and so there we are.
Yeah. Well, I definitely stay away from the news in the morning because I like to be happy for
Well,
the
that's good for you. Good for you. So anyway, tell us about your school and your studio.
So Joy Asana, it's at 915 Riverside Drive in North Grovernordale. So it's about 15 minutes, 15,
Yeah, that's
20
all it
from
is.
Charlton. It's very close. And we have classes every day of the week. Morning classes, evening classes.
Great.
We have 6 different instructors.
Super. And then decide what you want to do and then renew.
Yep, exactly.
Super. Bonnie, thanks a bunch. It's been great. And there you are, folks, and other conversations with.